Greetings, everyone. Thanks again for tuning in to another episode of Topic UFO. The year 2014 celebrates the 40th anniversary of a incident that happened over in the UK in 1974 called the Berwyn Mountain UFO Incident. Somebody that I was introduced to has done a lot of investigation, not only on this particular incident, but on UFO incidents throughout the UK. His name is Russ Kellett, and he is going to be joining us via Skype from Scarborough, North Yorkshire, over in the UK. He has been a UFO investigator for some 20 years, and he has been on numerous different television documentaries and different television shows, television talk shows, been in numerous newspaper articles on different UFO investigations. So it should be just an absolute incredible conversation here. So without further ado, we're going to bring him on. Mr. Kellett, are you out there, sir?
Good evening, Rick. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for joining us all the way from the UK. Russ, before we get into the actual Berwyn Mountain UFO incident, I just wanted to ask you a couple of quick questions. From what I understand, you've been investigating the UFO phenomenon now for some 20 years. How are things going over in the UK right now as far as the whole UFO thing? Is it continuing to grow in popularity as it is here in the States?
I think it is. I think I must admit, 10 years ago it was doing rather better. What you've got to realise is that people probably don't realise this, but with the actual, how can I put it, we have this austerity, because of the crash with the banks, and, money is pretty tight for a lot of people.
Right.
So, if you've got a family to bring up and you're wanting to go out at the weekend and research, and you're, using a vehicle, there's petrol to be bought or diesel, then there's your time. Sort of like, it's to be quite honest, I think it's pretty much hard for it, because, you've only got a certain amount of money, sort of like after you've brought it home to pay all your bills, and if you've got a family, you haven't got as much disposable income. So I think it's a bit tight for a lot of people. But, with the internet, I think it's made it a little bit easier. But it's still not getting out and meeting the people and meeting the witnesses.
Right. Understood. And of course, we're going through the same type of economic pressures over here in the States as well. So I completely understand where you're coming from.
The only people that I should imagine that it doesn't affect are the paid boys and girls that are paid by the government, if you know what I mean, to research.
I hear you. Okay. So what got you started in the study of ufology, and how long has it actually been? 20 some years now?
Oh, well, I was interested when I was 15 years old. I went to my first meeting with a school friend. But to be quite honest, it wasn't for me. After the meeting had finished, it was all people wearing suits and selling, the memberships and what have you. And it was something like a school, a schoolboy. Really, it was not in my financial grasp. So, and I was made to feel like a schoolboy, sort of like asking too many questions. So, when I left school, I got into motorbikes and what have you. And that was my life, being a biker. And then something very strange happened. And that was, I was having missing episodes on my motorbike. and my friend who was riding pillion passenger on a couple of occasions, basically had said that we'd gone home one way, and I remember riding home a different way, which is pretty much impossible when I'm riding the chopper, if you see what I'm saying.
Yes.
And it got to the point where we was falling out a little bit, because he thought I was taking the rise out of him. And I'm saying, look, this is the way I went, and that's all there is to it. And why would I be joking about something? And like I say, it did actually cause problems and cause an argument a few times. And then remembering something that happened whilst I was sat at traffic lights, and the traffic lights had been changing apparently, 3 or 4 times. And I'm sat at the traffic lights at green, and I'm supposed to be going. And I was just having this very strange thing happen where I was remembering something that had happened when we'd been together on my bike. And it didn't make any sense, And what it was, basically, was I remember being in a circular room with a checkered board floor, and with these people, around me,
And,
like wearing gear like knights, if you see what I mean.
And how old were you? How old were you when this happened?
I think I would have been about 25. I should imagine I'd have been about 25 when that happened.
Wow.
I'd have been about 25. So, and then again, another set of traffic lights. Somebody asked if I was all right. I was sat there, and the same thing happened. And this time, I remembered, sort of like going down this tunnel, and sort of like thinking, well, where's this tunnel? I don't remember. There's no tunnels in England that sort of like anywhere near where I live that I'd be going down. So all these things started happening, and so many things happened, so many strange things happened. And I remember and it was always when I was on my bike, sort of like, but like I say, with a friend who does not want to talk about any of this. Don't talk to me about UFOs. He will not talk to me about this. And then, of course, the one that I remember the most, I went to see somebody sort of like the next town across, about something to do with my bike, a job that needed doing, and he was at this pub, and I was told, go meet him there. He knows about this job that needs doing, and the guy never turned up. So I knew that I had to be back in for work the next morning, and so I set off, because like I say, I had to be up the next morning. On my way home, I was going across where there's a level crossing, and these red lights came down out of the sky, and I'm thinking, level crossing's closing. So I slowed down and stopped at the level crossing, and then all of a sudden this light hit me. Well, I looked around because I thought it was some fool messing about in a wagon or something, because I could feel the heat at the back of me. And I'm thinking, wow, that must be the headlights of somebody's truck, And so I turned round, of course I was not amused, but there was nothing behind me. So I looked at the sides, and nobody at the side of me there. And then I had a Harley Davidson petrol tank, and it had dials on, and I could see the reflection hitting the dials from above. So I looked up, and then I started feeling like I was floating. And the next thing I know, I'm back down with a bit of a bump on my bike. The lights had gone up, and the very big light, the bright light above, had gone out, and I could feel the wind blowing all around me. So I thought, well, I better move myself because I'm sat here in the middle of the road. It's night, and carried on home. And as I was going home on this long road, there was this big ball-like object at the side. And I kept on looking. I could see it, and I'm thinking, wow, that is close, and it's sort of like very close in some occasions because it was close to the road, and it was following me. It was like a big ball light, and it was going over the fields and then around buildings, and then finally it shot in front of my bike and then took off up into the sky, So I pulled over to watch this at a place called the Flappy, where we used to do motorbike scrambling, trail biking, at this big piece of land. So I pulled over at this car park and, put my bike on its stand and sat there. And I had a cig watching it, and it wasn't a cig, it was nothing else. And I was watching this going over towards a place called Halifax. And so I watched it for about 5 minutes and then continued with my journey home. When I got in, I noticed something a bit strange. When I was coming to the house lights were all off. When I got in the house, my sister and my mum weren't downstairs, my dad weren't downstairs. My dog came out, went in the garden for 2 minutes, and then I went to bed. But the strange thing is, my parents and my sister should have been up because I wasn't that late, Like I say, I worked the next morning. So the next morning, I can hear this shouting, "Come on, you're going to be late. Why you come in late, I don't know, when you've got work the next morning." And it was my mum shouting. And, like mums do. And anyway, I thought that's a bit odd. So I gets up and like a typical bloke, messed about with my dog when I came down for 2 minutes and what have you. And then straight out on my motorbike and to work. When I got in work, I worked with about 150 women. And as soon as I walked through the door, one of the young women that I worked with, she came up to me and she says, "Russ, have you seen your face?" And I says to her, "Have you seen your face?" And she says, "No, be serious now." She says, she says, "I didn't know you were like that." And I said, "Like what?" She says, one of these that goes to and has sunbeds, goes to these places where you go sit under a sunbed and lay under a sunbed and what have you. And I said, I don't. And she goes, you do. And she says, "Not only do you," she says, "but she says, you must have had it turned up pretty high. Go look at your face in mirror." I said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "Look at your face in your mirror." So I went into my little office, what I had, and there were a mirror were behind the door. And when I looked, all my face is, where I had an half-face helmet, and the area that was open, right, to the elements, it is now, if you have a look at, I have burns still on my face. And all my face was like sunburn, and back of my hands and my neck.
Wow.
And, sort of like, I just couldn't understand it. When I got home, after, tea time and what have you, my parents and my sister were home. I walked through the door, took my helmet off, and they just sort of like stood looking at each other. "What have you been doing?" And I said, "How do you mean?" "It was like this when I came in last night. It must have been." And then after that, though, I did start getting really ill. Like as if I had flu. Like flu-like symptoms.
Yeah. So, Russ, you've been involved in from what I understand, a lot of different UFO investigations. But the one that sticks out today, simply because of its 40th anniversary, is this Berwyn Mountain UFO incident.
That's right, yeah.
And so this incident started off as some lights in the sky, along with a earthquake of about, 3.5, 3.8 magnitude that that seemed to have happened at the same time. And then,
yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think it was 3.4 magnitude. It was epicenter was Bala, and near the lake, and but the thing is, for miles around, we're talking about this is in North Wales, in England. You know, places like Cheshire, Manchester. Even going further down, you know, sort of like there was, you know, Derbyshire, you know, further up Derbyshire, and then sort of like going towards Birmingham. There was people that were seeing and, you know, experiencing lights, right? Yeah.
mm-hmm.
But like I said, the earthquake as well, you know, put together. There was quite a lot happening, you know, sort of like that was around 8:38 when the actual earthquake happened.
So the lights were, it was first the lights were seen and then the earthquake happened?
More or less, yeah. But the thing is, I was given a story, right? Yeah. After that, there was supposed to have been lights seen on the Berwyn Mountains, right? Yeah, and villagers at a place called Llandrillo had all gone out and they'd used this payphone to ring the police, one or two of them, and you know, it's like the TV crews went, you know, the next day and asked the people what they saw. You know, but I got a different story. I got a testimony from a friend of mine who was at a dinner, right? Yeah, with like ex-servicemen and businessmen, was talking to somebody about he'd been seeing UFOs where he lived, and he said, you know, it's very interesting. And a chap said to him, well, I know something a little bit different about UFOs. And he said, well, what do you mean? And he told him a real story. And he says, I was at a meeting, right, yeah? He says, and we came out of that meeting on his way home, and it was on the same night. And he says, we came across a craft at the side of the road. He said it was a flying saucer. He says, and we got out, he says, and he says there were 5 alien creatures. 2 looked like they were in difficulty, like they'd been hurt. He says, and as we're basically looking in disbelief, the next thing he says, within a minute, he says there were trucks turned up and jeeps, you know, like Land Rovers, military.
Mm-hmm.
He said they told us, get out of this area now. Now the thing is, these gentlemen, out of the 5, 4 of them were ex-army during the Second World War. They'd seen action, yeah. So they wasn't really pleased when they was just told, you know, like to get out of there.
Gotcha.
Because some of them had rank, and pretty high rank as well, from what I can make out. So, like I said, they were none too pleased, but you know, they did what they was told. Mostly because the troops, right, yeah, were carrying weapons. They were carrying the weapon of the day, which was the SLR, and the sidearms. So they got out there fast because they had no alternative. But one of the guys, he was a keen photographer, and he says, I'm going to go up on that hillside, I'm going to take some photographs. You know, put his camera on a tripod, time lapse, and took some shots. But then he says there were more vehicles turning up and coming in their direction. So they thought, well, we better get out of here now, because obviously there's more and more vehicles turning up. And, you know, common sense prevailed, if you see what I mean. So the story is that, you know, there's a craft here at the side of the road, right, yeah? And as they were getting ready and moving away, there were troops got in, right, yeah? Got into the flying saucer. And there were other troops seemed to manhandle it and shove it because it was hovering. It was still sort of like hovering. And they shoved it up onto a flatbed truck. And they took the 5 aliens away in like a Land Rover.
Wow.
So the thing is, they said that what they must have come across this before because they just knew. One of them got in it, he says, and you know the others manhandled it and seemed to just shove it. And he says, how would you know? They just come and did it as if it were like clockwork, as if they'd done it before. How would you know how to do it if you hadn't done it before?
So now I understand though that there were also some like quote unquote men in black type of activity that happened around this area of the Berwyn Mountain incident after the actual incident happened. Is that correct?
Well, right. Well, let me tell you what happened next. Right, yeah. I was given this information. Right, yeah, and I was given. Right, yeah, and this is the original map. This is the original map, right, yeah, of what happened on the night. Right, yeah.
Wow.
And I was told, as you can see, I've had to stick it all together now with sellotape because it's that old. Now, what I was told was that you've got all the information here, what happened, and their testimony, right, yeah? And I had to look and that to find out. They said, you're a researcher, research. So I started writing letters off. Well, what I wanted to know was, in the letter, what they give us, they were talking about what had happened. They'd already looked themselves. And what they said was, this started off in the Irish Sea, right, yeah? And it started off by a battleship and minesweepers sweeping the Irish Sea, right, yeah? And what must have happened was that they must have hit something in the sea and it brought it out, right, yeah? Now, when I wrote off, I got a letter back. I wrote off to quite a number of different places, but what happened next was I was told that there was an operation that was taking place, right, yeah? This came from the Coast Guards because I wrote to the Coast Guards, and they sent me exactly what happened that night, right, yeah? And there was something called a photo flash exercise took place. Now, a photo flash exercise drops bombs, photo flash bombs, from the aircraft, and when it explodes, right, yeah, it lights up the area below, you know, for ground troops.
Yeah, kind of like the old military flare story.
Oh, hell yeah, but this stuff, when this stuff comes down, it'll burn through concrete, it'll burn through people, metal, you know, phosphorus.
Gotcha.
And so, I mean, it's people that use this in the RAF don't like using this photo flash, these bombs, or I should say they didn't then anyway, because they're very volatile, right, yeah? So this took place at the same time from where we was told that things were happening in the Irish Sea all the way down from Liverpool to North Wales and the Irish Sea. So why would they be using those? Now, what we found out is, yes, it does light up the ground, but when you use these over the sea, if there's anything under the sea, like submarines, they just light up. Only for a few seconds, but if you're flying above, you can give coordinates to the battleships and the minesweepers and tell them where to drop the next mine, the mines. Right, yeah.
Right.
So it looks like what happened was that they were called in to do this first, and it looks like, from all accounts, that they brought something out of the sea. Then what we found out, because I sent off for a load more documentation, and we found out that that fighters had actually chased after them, and it looks like they'd actually hit the flying saucer and brought it down. But was given another piece of metal as well, which is from an actual engine, a Pegasus engine, which is from what do you call it? I think what they call an Harrier. The Harrier jet, Harrier jump jet.
Okay.
So I've got a piece of Harrier, which I was told that the craft had actually fired upon and brought an actual aircraft down, but we'd fired on that, and that had brought the actual flying saucer down. But apparently there was actually 3 craft that night that got brought down. Some people say that one of them was the one on the Berwyn Mountains that was fully destroyed. Then there's the one that the 5 men saw at the side of the road, which is just in the Berwyn Mountains range, right, yeah? And then I was told by somebody else that they'd seen the flying saucer go into Lake Bala. It had been chased by a jet. And what it did was, it let the jet fly, it slowed down and let the jet fighter go past it, yeah? And then it went into the lake, it ducked down into the lake.
So,
right, yeah?
So Russ, what you're saying is that this whole Berwyn Mountain incident could have actually been multiple UFOs, not just...
Oh, yeah, it was definitely multiple, yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
There's no shadow of a doubt that it was multiple.
I did not know that. I thought this was just one. So what does the earthquake have to do with all of this? Was the earthquake something that the UK government pushed as a potential explanation for the lights? Because I know that they say that earthquakes can
lights.
produce lights, right?
Yeah.
So they use that as an excuse, basically.
Well, they tried to, but it hasn't worked. Because...
Okay, gotcha.
Because there was multiple detonations that night.
I see.
Right, yeah? And an ex-soldier turned around and says, there's something out there causing explosions. Right, yeah? Now, there is a theory. Now, I'm not 100% with this theory whatsoever. I'm just looking at the craft being brought out of the sea and fired upon, and them firing upon, our jets, and one being destroyed, one being brought down, crash landed, and the other one escaping. He went into Bala Lake. But there is a school of thought that says that there was, right, for instance, this has just come out through my investigations, right, yeah? And that is that the day before all this went on, right, yeah, they were taking photographs of the whole area where all this happened. Right?
Right.
And then the day after, they was taking photographs. This is like the cameras, from one of the RAF bases. Now, why would they been doing that? Why was there was a photo flash exercise taking place that night? And I have actually got a recording from a soldier who said that they'd been there sometime before. One of the other soldiers says a week before, right, yeah? And some time after. So we know that the military had actually turned up before all this had happened. Why would you turn up before this happened? Doesn't make any sense, does it?
Well, I don't know,
Unless
Russ.
you know something's going to happen.
Well, yeah, I mean, that you could come to that conclusion, for sure. For sure.
It's the only conclusion that you could come to. You know? Unless, of course, there were fortune tellers and they could tell, you know, something what was going to happen before.
Exactly.
You know?
Russ,
so...
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So the thing is, so that was another strange thing. You know, so it's like the chap that was talking to me, you know, he said we wasn't there. What we was doing, I can't say what we was doing, but it had nothing to do with aliens, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But something that came to me through looking at all this, which is a worry, and that is that if it wasn't to do with aliens originally, you can be certain of one thing, and that is that there is the alien link now. But the case that the military were there was explosions. This guy was talking about strange things. This soldier was talking about strange things, and I couldn't really understand. But let's put it this way: there's an alternative thought that there's an underground base somewhere that has been taken over by whatever, and they were trying to take it back. I don't know which is the most worrying, that we're dealing with aliens coming out of the sea, or that we've got troops that are there, you know, sort of like trying to take back an underground base. From who?
Very strange, Russ. Very, very strange stuff. Well, listen, Russ, unfortunately, we've come to the end of our time here for this episode. But I wanted to ask you, if people wanted to know more about you or the Berwyn Mountain Incident or the work that you do, is there any websites that they could visit to learn more about that?
Of course, yeah. We've got the British UFO Hunters.com.
Okay.
I do have a station as well, a radio station, which is UFOradio.pro.
Very good. And when do you do your shows?
Every night, 9 o'clock till 12.
Every night, 9 to 12.
That's Greenwich Mean Time.
Greenwich Mean Time.
That's like in an hour. No, it's in about 15 minutes.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. You better get going.
No, you're right. Like I'm okay, but like I say, I'll give you a mention tonight. I'll let people know that I've been on Topic UFO.
Absolutely.
And I'll post that on my Facebook as well.
Excellent. Yeah, and people can find you on Facebook too, right?
Yeah, Russ Kellett on my Facebook. By the way, Rick, if you'd like to come on my show and talk about Topic UFO, tell me what night you're free.
I would be honored to do that, and I would love to do it. I find it's so fascinating to talk with people about this subject, you know, from other countries and the things that are happening over there. And it's a real honor to have you on the show tonight, Russ. So I will definitely take you up there.
It is a pleasure to be on, and thank you very much for inviting me, Rick.
Well, you're very welcome. Well, listen, Russ, you have a great evening. Good luck on tonight's radio show, and we will be talking to you soon.
Thank you very much, Rick.
Okay. Good night, Russ.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Good evening.
The answer is to keep it.